This is the Modern Craftsman Podcast with
Tyler Grace from TRG Home Concepts,
Nick Schiffer with NS Builders,
Johnny Horahan from Vintage Builders, and
Mike Guertin from JLC Live, Fine Home Building, the Journal of Light Construction, Professional Deck Builder, and any other manner of outreach.
everything.
everything.
And Instagram now.
Yeah, but I've only got like 1,200 followers, so I don't think
That's
I
not
compare
bad.
with you guys.
I think you got Benny beat.
Yeah.
Benny's not on the mic and he's pissed.
Yeah.
I could, maybe we'll bring him on board. We don't need Benny. Do we?
We're just doing a straight follower count.
I think your audience would enjoy having him on because you refer to him all the time, and I've never heard or seen him. And wouldn't that be something? One of you could do the controls and have him.
He's funny looking, isn't he?
We got him a mic.
There's no cable connected to it. So we're at the Huber booth at JLC Live 2018.
So the people that don't know what Hubert is,
Advantech, Zip Sheathing, they're both brands.
correct.
And we're
For the longest time, I didn't know who Hubert was.
When did you discover them?
God, I don't know when I was trying to figure out why they don't have a social media page.
Well, I mean, you knew
Zip.
their products. You just didn't know that.
People behind it.
Yeah.
right.
I found out about them years and years ago. My lumber salesman, outside salesman, showed up on the job site. And we had been using some, regular fir plywood at the time for subfloor. And he said, gave me a sample and said, "We'd like you to try this." And I said, "What are you, nuts? That's OSB, right?"
Right.
And he said, "Look, I'll cut you a deal." And he, had us try it. Never turned back.
Yeah.
And I don't get paid to say that either.
No, I think that's a general consensus. Anyone that tries it typically stays with it.
Yeah.
I mean, even their subfloor glue, which was probably introduced just in the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Everyone
Probably
that,
less, I think.
yeah, everyone that uses it is like, this is way easier. And you get the squeak-free guarantee.
Dude, every time I walk by a box of their glue and it's either covered in snow or it's raining out, I'm always like, wow, what would I have done before this?
Did they put that out after their subfloor? Or
Yeah,
was
correct.
it like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was developed for the subfloor.
yeah,
so was it the same time? Or after?
No, after.
After.
Yeah.
yeah.
I see.
Now, when I say I started using this subfloor when it first came out, I'm talking like I looked like you. I did not have a gray hair on my head.
So
I have a couple.
someone should describe the way Tyler looks that we're pointing at him.
mustache and,
Super professional.
Yeah.
and tattoos.
This was to legitimize myself.
The mustache?
Trying to look like a true dad.
Success.
So how long actually is that?
How long
When
was
did
what?
you start using it?
It had to be. I'll have to find out when it came out because I know it was within the first year, but I'm going to say it was the early 2000s, but I could be wrong. Could have been in the late 90s.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people near me still don't use it. You just don't see it. Even a lot of the premier builders is OSB, house wrap,
Yeah.
just kind of junk.
There is so much stuff that gets out on the market, and until somebody brings it to a contractor, I mean, like in that case of my example, until that outside sales guy said, "Look, take a look at this," and this was a sales guy I trusted and I knew, until somebody does that touch, I could see a million marketing pieces and just ignore it.
Yeah, you'd
But-
never think twice.
You're in your rhythm. You don't want to change it. You
No.
know what's
You-
bulletproof to you.
Well, it's systems.
Yeah.
Oh, I know how to bid that. I know the labor that goes into it. I know, how it's going to stand up. You see something that you don't know, and it's like, I'm not going near that.
Mhm.
Looks fancy. Looks expensive. It's green.
A lot of people have been burned before. I
Yeah.
mean, and once burned, the builder doesn't go and trust anything else.
Yeah.
So what are we going to talk about today? I got a whole long list.
Well, I was going
Why
to say,
don't-
you have
yeah,
a list
Seriously,
in
you
front
can
of
run this thing, man.
I've done that
I mean,
before.
yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, I mean, you should if you're in the building industry. Mike's been involved with all of the programs and pushing for education, knowledge, kind of sharing the craft for years before any of us were doing it.
Long before.
And before he had a platform, it's easy for us. We just sit on our phones and do it. He's like actually out there, reaching out to the magazines, scheduling it,
Boots
doing
on the
seminars.
ground.
Yeah. We're just sitting. I mean, you two especially just literally sit on your phones. And But I mean, from my perspective, Mike, like I learned how to frame decks, deck stairs, landings, everything from like finding articles that you did before I got into this industry. And like I taught myself so much stuff from you explaining it in an art, like what we're doing and putting the knowledge out there. And that's what we're always trying to do. And everyone's always asking us, why are you putting it out there? And for us, it's because anyone who wants to grab onto that and make a good use of it or increase their product, the quality of their product, whatever they're doing, for us, that's worth it. That makes sense. I'd like to somewhat touch on that. I know that you have a whole list of things you want to get into, but I think for me personally, it's why you're doing all of this. And it's not, I know that you don't get paid that much doing this stuff, that it's for the money. Like, why are you putting so much effort into getting your experience and your knowledge out there from before it was cool to do, before it was an influencer and everything else?
Well, let's back up a step. I mean, you said I didn't really have the same platform that you guys do. I did. I actually probably had a bigger platform than you even have now. I mean, how many followers you got between all of you? Maybe what, 50,000, 100,000?
Yeah.
When I would publish an article in Fine Home Building magazine, and frequently there'd be one in Fine Home Building and one in the JLC that I would write, and this is going back 20, 25 years ago, would appear at the same month.
Right.
And at that time, the magazine sales were probably between the two of them, maybe 500,000. So I'm hitting 500,000 subscribers, and then I'm hitting there's the ancillary people, like you guys all, if you subscribe or got those magazines, you read it, then it goes to one of the guys you work with, then it goes to the next guy you work with. That's the way I learned about these magazines. I didn't pick them up. My friend Rick Arnold, actually his mother started subscribing to Fine Home Building back at like issue 4, and then she'd read it, she'd give it to Rick would give it to me, and down the line. So that 500,000 probably blows up to $1.5 million, 2 million, more than that. So when you look at that scale, that's evaporated because of the way the whole marketing side of the magazines is just died.
Right.
And now it's just shifted.
People digest content in a different way.
Exactly. So why I do it? Because it's the most fun I have what I do. I write magazine articles and I come and do these shows because it's the most fun I have. You know how you have you can be passionate about something and you're not going to get paid for it, but boy, it's just so satisfying. Last night.
That's every job, right? Pretty much.
That's
every job.
What?
Passionate about something I know I'm not getting paid for it. It's like I'm not charging enough.
But like last night at that event that we were all at, and there was like 6 guys came up to me and said, "Hey, I read your stuff. I learned this. I did this project," and just what you mentioned about the decks. It's like that makes it for me. That is more valuable to me than all the money that I could possibly make doing it. Yeah.
But was there a trigger in the beginning that like you had knowledge to get out? Like, take us back in the beginning. That like how'd you, like, a lot of people that we talk to want to get their stuff published. They want to put their stuff out. They just don't know how.
Oh, it's the easiest thing. The magazines and websites are hungry for content.
Yeah.
Written content, video content, and they'll just fall. I won't say they'll fall over themselves. You got to be good. You got to know what you're doing. You got to know what you're talking about. I actually didn't really know what I was talking about. My first entree into it was a letter to the editor, back when there were no such thing as computers. I mean, this is back in the late 80s. And I wrote a letter to the editor, to JLC, and the editor, some guy had written an article on doing mud sills, and I said, yeah, I do it differently, and boy, your way looks really complicated. So I threw out the ideas to in the letter, and the guy said, can I publish this, and can you get me some pictures? And never got paid for it. And then Fine Home Building, just through a matter of course, they reached out to me and my partner, because at that time, you guys are on the podcast to talk about developing systems and a culture in your company when you're building your company. And Rick Arnold and I were doing that. We had profit sharing. We had safety, like, to the nth degree. And this is like in the 1992, 1993 when nobody was doing it. And that trickled up to Fine Home Building, and they said, these guys, kind of like what happened with you guys, said, these guys know what they're doing. We want to, have you tell that story. And through the magazine, in the skills side of things, the process. And that's where it started.
So what when I know that you first approached JLC, but then when it was reciprocal and they're actually coming to you for content and everything else, did that kind of take you to the next level and give you more motivation to do more, to do better? I know for myself personally, like when I got involved with them, it was a huge confidence booster for me. And I was like, they're reaching out to me. I'm not on their level at all. And they're like, well, in a certain way you are, or you're above what we're doing, because that's what they're trying to attain through like social media marketing and all that stuff. But for me, that was huge, and that gave me a lot of incentive and motivation. How was that the same thing for you? Like you said, it's not about getting paid for it. It's about somebody learning from what you're doing.
I think my experience was different. You know, and you had mentioned that on one of your previous podcasts, and I can understand that. But for me, it was more it was different. I think I had where I got pushed to a higher level was from the readers writing in hate mail or letters to the editor and calling me on things. And then I realized, crap, I don't know my stuff.
Yeah.
I'm saying stuff that
Makes you
really...
second guess it. Makes you second guess yourself.
I wasn't second guessing myself. I didn't have to second guess. I knew I was screwing up.
Yeah.
And I have editors that are counting on me to be the expert. So now I've got to be the expert. And then when we started doing the JLC shows back 22 years ago, when we started in Providence in, I think, 96 or 97, that raised it to another whole level, because people are in the audience and they either call you out right then and there, or they come up after and say, oh, and by the way, you can't do that. That does not comply with the code. You know what? And this would apply to you guys too. I had a platform, and I got smacked down by. Okay, you don't own this podcast. Your audience does. Mm-hmm. I don't own JLC Live. Even though Informa, the company that runs it, they don't own this.
Right.
It's the guys in the field that come to these things all the time. They're the owners, and we're responsible to them, aren't we? And so because of that, we have to be way above everything in a lot of regards, you know, both in our knowledge and our skill set, in what we convey to them and how we do that. Because otherwise we're doing them a disservice. So,
well, directly related to that, I mean, that's one of the biggest questions we get, at least, you know, through DM, is that when there is someone that calls you out, what is the conversation at that point? Someone raises their hand and calls you out that you did something wrong. You know, are you conversing with them? Give me the information.
Come on up.
Yeah.
The best thing that we can do, right, and you guys do this, is you take in what you pick up from other people, and you go, that's important, that's important,
right.
That's important. And then you convey that back out to your audience. And
right.
That's the most important thing we can do, because that, you know, it's none of us are smart enough on our own, but together
right.
we're really smart, you know.
I think that's important to note. I mean, a lot of times there's that immediate defense mechanism, but like you said, bring them up on stage or have the conversation going and communicate, because other people they may have a better idea, or maybe you are wrong and you've been doing it wrong your whole life. So having that open conversation, open forum is huge. And
we open that up. A lot of us doing these presentations, we open that up right at the beginning and say, look, I'm just a conduit for the information that's been accumulated over a century, 2 centuries.
Right.
And if you know something I don't know, or you got an idea or a tip or a trick, please come up. You know, let me know, because either you'll have to talk about it, or I'm gonna have to talk about it, because everybody's got to know, because this is a smarter, better way of doing things.
And that for us, we get asked that nonstop. Like, if there's why aren't we retaining all of those secrets? You're basically just any knowledge that you have dumping out there for the masses. Why? Like, wouldn't you want to protect that? And people are asking us all the time, wouldn't you want to protect that knowledge? And we've never even second guessed that. It's just like, if we have it, put it out there. If it helps elevate the entire industry and make everyone better, then it's a win-win for everyone. Then everyone, I know for myself, so much of it was marketing at first. Like, I'm doing something a certain way, so that when my customers see what I'm doing, they start questioning what other people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then it got to a point where it's like, I want to differentiate myself, but also, if it's going to make somebody else's job better, or the entire industry is going to get better for it, or 6 other people are going to take that and run with it, or make it better themselves, I don't have any issue with that. And if somebody if it starts threatening my own company, my own business, then that pushes me to better myself even more.
You know, you in a few of your podcasts, you've mentioned this. Let me make a statement and see if you agree with my perception of what I've gathered. Is that there's been a lack of skill sharing from throughout the industry. I think you're dead wrong, and I'd ask you to prove that. I think there's a lot of anecdotal evidence, and you can always find. I think you had an example of somebody, a company, family company, and then the father died, and he had all the secrets, and that went to the grave with him and the children. Yep, that's a good story. I mean, you can relate to that, but humans share. Humans, you know.
I'm going to stop you right there because I've had my own company and I'm doing it again, and I've been on other sides of it where I've worked for other companies, and I've been there where owners only give you enough information that you stay there. Meaning, I could have learned how to do pricing. I only learned what the job was and given certain pieces of paper to do my job. Okay? I could have done so much more and done so much more for that company, but they were scared to give you as much information so you would walk. And I think it's more common than we're alluding to that owners, a lot of them, just want to retain and just use a workhorse and only give as much information as they need, and it's going to make them money. And that's it. And I've seen it over and over again, and I've been in companies where they're doing it, and I've had to change the mindset and the culture. So it is, and I think it was a lot of, when I started in the business 22 years ago, I was working for, both my first two bosses were in their mid-60s. And it was definitely that mindset that they didn't want to give it all up. Like, I'd have to peel it away from them little bit by little bit, like stay late, go to the shop all weekend, meaning totally show that, hey, I'm 150% committed, not to anything else, but just to you and how this works and whatever you have. And that was the only way to get that out, a little bit of knowledge. It was like literally trying to squeeze it out and just take more of it.
That's too bad. That's a shame.
But it's, I've seen it a number of times, and I've only worked for probably a half dozen companies. You know, so if that's happening in that small little bubble that I was in, and I know there's a lot of guys that I've talked to that have had that same thing.
You know what? I think we might be looking at it a different way. I'm looking at, I'm a field guy. I'm not a big company owner. I see it amongst people in the field. They want to share all these ideas. I mean, and I've got, 25 years of like being out there and guys always coming up and always sharing. And even when I was getting up in the field, coming through, picking up the trash on the job site and things like that, those older guys were always saying, oh, here's how we do this and here's how we do that. So you're talking more on the bigger, the size of the business, you think, versus in running a business, or is it? You think
might be generational too. It might be that like it's within your peers. Like a lot of our peers are sharing stuff. I think it's more so the passing down or the handing of the torch. I think that it's coming underneath somebody else where they're not disclosing those. Like we're sharing between our peers. I think a lot of our peers share between us, but I think more so generational that the older generation didn't hand down. It's like, you're not entitled to this knowledge. You have to earn this knowledge, which I do get. And I think that that's the case with a lot of trades where if you want to learn something, you should put your time into it. It shouldn't just be handed to you. It's the same thing even with, as silly as it sounds, like the craft of tattooing, making needles, making pigments. You can't just ask somebody, how do you do that? Like, go get tattooed, go figure it out. And it's the same thing with work. Like, I don't want somebody just to come to you, hey, how do you do this? Well, why don't you come onto my job and watch me and help me and give me a hand and learn? And instead of asking me questions where you just want an immediate answer and you just want it the easy way, like go through the process of getting those answers. And then I think that you feel justified in giving all of that information. But I think that it is out there and they're all people want to share. But I think more so just the older generation has always kept a lot of. That's why all of us have clung to people like you, where you're giving away that knowledge. Like I didn't have anyone to teach me how to do that stuff.
Well, let's define the older generation. I'm just thinking back, and because I learned from a bunch of old guys that I would have called the older generation, right? And then and I don't know. I've just felt so supported all down my career, And maybe that's unique to where I grew up and where I've worked, but I've traveled all around the country in the last, bunch of years. Because, like you guys, you get hooked up with companies and all of a sudden you're, first class here and first class, everywhere they shower you with stuff, because you got an audience. And you get to meet contractors everywhere. And boy, it's like we get into the, you go to the dinner at night and you get to actually talk personally, and everybody's just so open. And I've never found anybody who's resistant to sharing their experience, their knowledge, or anything. In all of the generations that I've experienced, guys, when I started, there was an old timer. Oh, I'm forgetting his name now. He was like 70-something years old. He'd never used a circular saw. He would do jobs doing finish work with a hand saw, and that was because he said, or there were no chop saws at the time. So and he was just like, hey, here's how we're going to do this, and here's why. I don't know. Do you think was maybe, I don't know, in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s? Where was that?
The way I look at it is you're talking about the older generation from you. So you were taught by the older guys. For me, the guys that are in their I'm going to generalize it, but the last 10 years, they're willing to share because they're worried about the industry. But the guys that have 20, 30 years left are the ones that, they're in the middle of the teetering, where us, we probably have more than 20, 30 years left in this in some way, and we're all about sharing. So my opinion is there's that disconnect in between the guys that are on their way out and the guys that are starting, where we're trying to grasp onto the guys that are leaving, but there's that whole generation in between them and us that isn't sharing.
I think it's also, I've never really put much thought into it until you somewhat challenged what we were saying, but I think it's also who you're surrounding yourself with. So I think that if everyone who's here has enough confidence in their process, in their product, that I don't have an issue sharing what I'm doing or telling you what I'm doing, because if you don't put the work in, I can tell you what finish I'm using, what sprayer I'm using, but if you don't put the work in and learn how to do it, it doesn't matter. So I think that a lot of it's surrounding yourself with certain people. I think that the people who are good carpenters, good contractors, good business owners don't have an issue sharing that information because they have enough confidence in themselves that they're not threatened by that. But I think that the industry as a whole, there's so many contractors out there who are so concerned with making the next dollar and preserving themselves that they don't want anyone to threaten them. So they're clamming up with a lot of that. And I think there's I think there's far less talented craftsmen nowadays for us. I know that's a fact. Like, there's far less people our age doing this who are actually talented than when you were our age doing this. So you probably had a higher volume of craftsmen who were willing to share this knowledge than we do as well.
That's a fact. That's interesting. So you say that's a fact. I mean,
there just has to be less because you're not learning it in as many spots.
I don't
it's
have
not in all the schools.
There's one kid who I graduated from high school with who's doing what I'm doing now, and he's working for his dad. Like, how many kids that you went to high school with ended up going into the trades?
None.
None?
No. I mean, there was I mean, there were very few. It was, the problem, the issue that you bring up with the college tracking that all the schools do. That was even happening when I was in school, in high school, in the 60s and 70s. And, went to college when really probably wasn't the best necessarily thing for me. But that was, and the kids that were going into or were tracked into career trades were the troublemakers at the time. So, and I think, and I've talked to teachers, that are older than me, and they said that was often the case at the time. So I think that's changing, which is a good thing. I think that's in the last 4 or 5 years. I've been doing outreach with high schools in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, about 5 in Mass and about 7 or 8 in Rhode Island over the past 15 years. And we were hitting bottom maybe, right about the time the recession hit. And it's been lingering. And for the last 3 or 4 years, the recruitment's been up.
Right.
The enthusiasm of young people coming in, and then just the acceptance of the towns, the cities, and the parents to let the kid think outside of just the college tracking.
So to that point, and going back to your earlier point, you talked about how you had possibly a larger audience of 500,000 to 1.5 million through magazine articles. But do you think the media, because of for instance, social media in general, we may not have that many people on the back end, say 1.5 million, but the direct outreach and the direct relationship, like I would read your articles and it probably wasn't until maybe the 10th article that I realized that, who you were, and it was the same recurring, where if, someone like us, we're putting a content and it's immediate direct interaction.
You have the most powerful medium.
Right.
That, between both the internet and the direct messaging and all of the Instagram and the podcast, that was never available to us. It's extremely powerful, and I think that personal touch and personal outreach can make a big difference.
Yeah, because it's so direct. So these kids that are in school are seeing it live. It's not an article that they're reading and then flipping through a couple weeks, a month, year later. This is today, and this is how cool it is. And you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it. Yeah. And I think that. Like, what's your take on the way the media shifted in relating to bringing kids into it?
It's fascinating to me. I don't have a full handle on it. I work with the schools and I talk to the kids on the job site, and it's amazing how few of them are playing with Instagram anymore. Whereas 5 years ago, when I was playing with, working with the kids, they were all about it. So I think that to them, you're the old generation.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary when you start thinking about it. It's like now you guys are in the middle when you think about it.
Yeah.
You got these younger people in their teens, and then they got me at my old age, and then you guys in the middle. So I haven't got my whole head wrapped around it, and it's something I think about all the time. And in fact, I wake up in the middle of the night and my brain's just spinning like, man, what can we do? What can we do more than what we're doing now? And what you guys are doing, like I wrote you a 4-page letter, right? Did you guys all read that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what you're doing, it's really a strong move in the right direction. But okay, so how do we ramp this up? How do we get you up to 1 million followers?
I got a question
and how do you get to the schools?
In the email and in the letter, you were surprised that this was coming up. That, remember you were saying, hey, I've been doing this for a long time, and it was refreshing to have guys that are this passionate. Why was that surprising to you?
That you were passionate?
There was a whole crop of guys that were passionate about bringing this industry back up to a higher standard. Are you seeing that there being a drop in standards?
No, not at all.
Really?
No, I don't think there's a drop. Well, okay. There's the high end, there's a middle end, and there's low end. I think it's always been like that.
Well, I guess you've been here for, 22 years or longer at this show. You're telling me all the products aren't changing on this floor.
Oh,
they're based around craftsmanship the same way they were 22 years ago.
Wow.
I think things are changing.
So it's fascinating how fast the industry has changed in the career that I've had. Because when I started, things seem to have plateaued. Okay, so we're balloon framing up to 48, 47? And then there was this tremendous change from that period of time to around 52, 53. And it went from balloon framing to platform framing. Plywood products became the industry standard. And then there were legacy builders that when I started were still using plank sheathing and were still doing sort of a modified balloon frame. So there was this legacy that carried, but the industry changed. It was a big shift. And we've seen that in the last number of years with products that you see here on the floor. The products I saw on the floor 20 years ago, the ones that were good survived. The ones that weren't kind of got tamped down. I think that's the case now. It's amazing what we're getting offered to build with. And it's...
Well, I think to Johnny's point, we oftentimes see products that are trying to find an easy way out of being a craftsman.
You don't need skill.
Yeah, rather than being, putting the craftsmanship into it. It's like, actually, we'll just sell you this, and then it looks like you did a really good job.
Yep.
Which to the trained eye isn't like, for us, it's not a viable option because you can tell that it's taking that shortcut from A to B where it's like, why do you have to reinvent that? There was nothing wrong with it before.
So
that's educating
a good question.
Our clients.
So where would you put the bar in products and where... Okay, so we build with the materials that are available to us with any generation. So in the Stone Age, you're building with rocks and dirt, right? And it just kind of goes from there, and you can follow that through Clovis Point and all of that. But then we get to it gets to a bigger issue, I think, is what you're trying to say. But I'm saying
I'm
when
trying
you
to
get
take
to
it
the
to a scale where when you look at it, like I remember when I don't even know. I remember when headquarters or whatever it was. It used to be Home Depot before it was that.
HQ.
HQ.
Yeah.
HQ. Remember HQ? They started.
what was
It
HQ?
was a
like
big.
a lime green.
It was a big
Home
box
Depot.
store like Home Depot.
Okay.
And Lowe's, and they came out. I remember it happened in Norwood, Mass, right near. God, I want to say General. I forget what lumberyard that was. It's changed hands a couple times now, but it was right next to a huge lumberyard. And what happened was they went under because people had so much loyalty to the quality and product that the lumberyard had that was just down the street. What I feel like with the speed and the way the industry's gone and it's evolved. I'm not saying it's gone. It just evolved to a different standard. That it's all about speed. So now the box stores are now popping up everywhere, and the little lumber yards are harder to get to. And I think that I'm just trying to take little bits of pictures that you're seeing that kind of shape this industry. Where it's like, I love the fact that HQ went out of business because the local lumber yard had so much loyalty with its people, and I think it's all changed. I don't think that loyalty's there for that.
I think
it's all about.
Like a perfect example, my house is 130 years old. My attic is just a scratch coat of plaster, and the casing doesn't match the same casing that's on my first and second floor, but it's a handmade beaded casing that is nicer than any casing that you could go walk into any store and buy right now. And that's a huge difference for me. Like, that was the downgrade 130 years ago, to have like a hand nailed but still made on site beaded casing. Like, why not just put up flat stock in the attic? And I think that that's the difference, that like I couldn't get that casing if I wanted to now, or I'd have to get it custom milled. Why the options, it just seems like the lower grade options are so far more prevalent now than they were before.
It's so accessible. Like it's about convenience. It's whatever's right there, whatever people can see daily, that's what they want. They don't look any further, and I don't think that anyone's putting that value on that beaded casing. You get me? I love that. But I don't think everyone, I feel like every house we build, it's killing me when people are like, hey, we should pick this tile or pick this trim for resale. That's the talk when they're building houses. Back in the day, I don't think that was the talk. That when they were building a house in your time, tell me if I'm wrong, it wasn't about resale. It was about.
It's been about resale for at least my career. Maybe it wasn't before that, but yeah, my career it was.
That was See, I want to challenge that because I feel like that wasn't the initial thought.
For people when they're buying a house or having a house built, their
Yeah.
initial thought is not to have resale. You're right.
Right. Where
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
every job I look at, every single job we look at,
Every decision
the
that's
first,
made.
the first thing they bring up is like, well, what about in 7 years when I sell it?
Yeah. No,
Like, why three?
Yeah.
I can agree with that. Yep.
You know,
No
they'll
problem
make
there, but-
an entire decision, that they hate because they're afraid of resale. Where
Yeah.
I don't think
They're
that
not
was
planning to be in
top.
that for generations.
I think I don't have such a strong feeling about that one way or the other, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's maybe I've become, you know how you bump your head against the ceiling hard enough for long enough, and you just say, I'm not going to go there because, that's why it's great you guys can just like keep doing that.
Keep bumping our heads.
Well, Tyler hits his
No,
head.
really.
Johnny does.
No, think about it. And I'm sure there were people before me that were feeling the same way. It's like, that I can't have an impact there, and I can really have an impact over here, so I just put it out of my mind.
But I think that what separates a lot, like everyone here from the vast majority, is that we're questioning everything. We're challenging everything. And maybe you're not challenging things today as you were 20 years ago, but at one point you challenged every single thing that you did. And even you just mentioned you were challenging a lot of what you did because of what other people were shedding light on to you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important for the industry. Every single thing that comes across your plate, you should be challenging, hey, is there a better option? Is there a better process? Can we do something differently? Can we make this last longer? can we manipulate the budget to give you a better final product? And I think that the difference between a lot of us is we're still questioning everything. We're not just like putting our heads down saying, hey, this is our market, this is what we can sell, this is what people pay for. Like, no, we want to do better. We want to do better work, install better products. We want long-lasting quality products so we don't have callbacks and everything else. And I think that's where the industry needs to shift. We had the conversation last night about that, and it's like once we stop questioning what we're doing or if there's anything better, there's always going to be, I said it to Steve last night, there's always going to be people who want really high-end work, middle grade work, and then there's people who just can't afford it. But I think that the people delivering them should be different people. It shouldn't, everyone shouldn't be doing all the types of work. I think that for people who want to pay a lower price, they need to get a volume-based guy or somebody who's looking to break into the market and kind of cut their teeth on those jobs. But I think there still needs to be a lot of those people who are questioning everything that we do.
Let me pick up on something there. You're talking about what the industry is providing us manufacturer-wise, the products, and we have impact on deciding. I guess where I focus my attention and where I think there's an equal need is focusing attention on how those things get installed, how we're doing the work. That's the craftsmanship part.
Right.
And that's the trade craft part. So we got our selection part on one side, the materials were being offered, but no matter whether I'm installing some crappy cabinets or some good cabinets, I can install them in a crappy way or a good way. And I want to see all of those. I want that part of the industry. That's where I can have an impact. I mean, we can have our impact with the manufacturers and our selections and all of that, and we can kick back against them. But, if a company wants to come up with something that's simpler and easier to use because they're thinking that there's not enough of us that are qualified to install it, then that's on them. That's fine. And we can push them or ignore them.
No, I think if we band together and raise the craftsmanship, that product is irrelevant.
So here's
but if we don't do that, then that will oversaturate. Like, if I see there's a building going up in the center of town of Natick, and it's matching up with old brick buildings that are absolutely gorgeous. This is peel and stick tile. That's a brick veneer that's going on.
I'm sorry, is it peel and stick?
Yeah, basically
brick?
It's brick, and they're not masons. They're just basically guys that are just tiling it up and then grouting. It's almost like the veneers in your house, but there's little setters that go in that's foam, and they basically snap in brick. And this whole building's being done that way, and I'm like, so I look at it that way. How do you go backwards? That product exists. It's going in. Why? Is it because there's not enough masons to do that work? Is it because there's no journeyman, there's no lower level to do that work? That's just straight brick laying? Like, why is that happening? And why does that product get on that job? Is it price point? Is it speed? I'm just trying to figure out what it is, and I'm like, my mason's probably 55, and there's no one else behind him.
Okay, so let's shift. Okay, so how do we get guys? We can complain about what we're being provided. How do we get those people that you're talking about? Okay.
I think that's all part of it, and I think that speaks to, like you saying, if you're going to install cabinets, whether they're high-end cabinets or low-grade cabinets, my install is going to be the same. I'm going to take the same exact process. But if I know that I'm installing a superior product, that it's going to last longer, that it's more enjoyable to install. If I have to worry about a cabinet blowing apart because the plastic clips are in there, like, it's a pain in the butt, and you have to be fragile, and the slides don't work, the doors can't adjust. I can't take, even though my install and my process is the same, I feel like the level of pride, I just get so frustrated with how poor the product is that it aggravates me. And then I'm there, and then my employee's like, okay, I see his mannerisms and his attitude, and he's frustrated by this, and then his entire demeanor changes. I think that we need to give the younger generation something to take pride in. And I think that with us, I think that your perception of the industry is somewhat disillusioned as well as ours, because we surround ourselves with a type of person who's very much similar to us. But I think that the vast majority of the industry isn't like us. So I think that we need to, I know for myself, if I put a job listing out, not that I want to be growing right now, but I would get a lot of high quality applicants. But 90% of the people we talk to can't find good help. But we've created an environment where kids want to come work for them because they know that they get to take pride in what they do. And I don't care if you're digging holes, if you're waiting tables, if you're pushing shopping carts. If you can take pride in what you do, somebody's going to come work for you. And I think that that's what we need to do. If I have Steve show up and say, Steve, I don't have enough money on this. These are SHIT cabinets. We just got to get in and get out. He's not going to want to come to work. He's not going to want to stay late. But if hey, Steve, we built these cabinets ourselves. This is a really nice kitchen. Like, let's take our time, get it right. I don't care if it takes longer than we anticipated. I just want to walk away from here and be really proud of it. Steve's going to love his job, and it's not going to be about the money. And I think that that's what we need to do. But our industry is so price-driven and so cutthroat that it's really difficult to find contractors like ourselves. And I think that we are somewhat disillusioned in that fact.
And to that point, I mean, we're doing two things here. We're trying to educate the industry to push everyone to be better and to push for better products and push for better craftsmanship. But on the flip side, on the consumer side, we're also trying to educate the end user that, listen, this is why it's more expensive, or this is the quality that you should expect, and these are the questions that you should be asking your contractor.
These are the steps we take to prevent anything from happening.
When you walk through, and when people walk through their house, they're picking apart the casing that's splitting apart because they didn't glue the miters or something like that, because they're seeing it on a daily basis. And educating both sides of that industry is why I feel is why that gap is closing, and then thus creating jobs for craftsmen.
I mean, I worked for my dad growing up, and he was of the mindset, get it done quickly and cheaply. I hated working for my dad. When I got done college, I started my own company because I didn't want to go get an office job. It's not because I wanted to be in construction or be a carpenter, because I had the worst taste in my mouth working for my father. And then as I got on my own and started realizing what was right and wrong and being able to take pride in my work, that made all the difference for me.
I didn't know that. That's big.
For me, like, that's being able to take pride in what I'm doing is the difference between me working an office job and me not, or me absolutely hating every day I work for my father versus me like not being able to wait to step foot on the job. And I think that that's the environment that we need to create for the next generation, or else they're not going to want to show up.
And Mike, I think the answer that I think one of the tactics we can use is not everyone can get to those schools and basically interject their thoughts and their culture with these kids. I think the kids that are people that are listening to this podcast need to start reaching out with internships. Just simple, get kids pushing brooms. Start in that way. That way people can get involved in the industry, and there's an outlet there,
So explain that again. You're calling for contractors to bring kids in and mentor them?
Yeah.
I'm all over that.
It is 3-4 years ago.
Okay, so let's talk about your contractor listeners, what can they do to help us?
I'm telling you right now, 3-4 years ago when I was at this show, all I wanted was to meet contractors and see if I could work for them or work with them or be, and there was never anything put together, even if it was just, even the meet and greet networking event, it wasn't an environment where you'd go there and kind of exchange cards. It was cold.
Yep.
And John had the example the other day. It's like, that should be an opportunity where the kids and the guys that own businesses swap cards. It's like, give me your card.
Baseball cards.
And that was that email that you were circulating. And that's why when we saw that, and Andy and a couple of the Informa guys,
Right.
Well, here's the thing is I've walked this floor because I'm looking for that one thing every year that's going to educate me or make me better on this floor. That's why I've been here forever. I always walk it. And when it turned into, I could do this in an hour and a half. So the kids that are coming here, I don't know how many Voc School kids that are students that are walking this floor. What I want is, I don't want them to have the same thought I did. Is that, all right, I walked it last year. What am I seeing this year? It's not any different. Maybe I'll skip 2 years and then come again.
Right.
But if there's
product.
if we can make it, you have this many people here. You saw how many people came last night. Those are all people that should be mentoring kids.
I agree 100%. See, that's and my struggle. I know how to do it for me because I've been doing it for years, and I meet any contractor that has to be anybody who works in Rhode Island, whether they are hanging drapery hardware in a house or whether they're building the entire house as a general contractor, has to take a class at that I teach along with another guy. It's a 5-hour class. And so we get to meet everybody who's coming in. There's some old guys, some young guys anyway. They're getting the registration. And I asked them, how many of you have had trouble finding people, good people? And like half the hands go up. Because a lot of them coming from Mass and Connecticut to come into Rhode Island to work. There's a lot of work here right now. And I say, do you know what schools around you have career tech programs? Very few hands go up. I said, have you met the teachers? And then I pop up a PowerPoint slide. I already have it prepped. And I got a list of all the schools, a list of all the teachers. How do we make that connection? Because a lot of contractors don't know who to ask, who to talk to. They might want to do something, but we got to give them some tangible takeaways and put it up on a website. Here's a catalog of the schools, and you can plug into them. And
I mean, the guys look. That's the second question you ask. It's like you're having trouble finding people. What avenue are you using to try to find them? Yeah. And no one knows. They're like, well, I don't know. I threw an ad
steal it
up
from
on,
another guy.
Yeah, I threw an ad on Craigslist. Or,
yeah.
I mean, this right here is a perfect opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And just like any other trade show or anywhere that they're going to be a group of like-minded, and everyone here is here for a similar reason. And whether they're working for someone or they own a business, I mean, it's a huge networking event, and something just needs to be put into place. It's like, here is so-and-so, meet so-and-so.
So here's what the Rhode Island Home Builders Association has been doing, because they've been on this for a couple of years, and I've been on a few committees. They've put together a jobs board on their website where contractors looking for people and students or anybody who wants to get in. So that's, like any sort of internet, connections. But then they're going and doing outreach, and they're getting contractors who are members to get together with that sort of a meetup with the students, and they're creating events where that happens.
That's good.
I don't know if that happens all around the country. I'm just wondering if there are some models out there, and if any of your listeners, see some model in your community. I mean, send it to these guys, because they can get the message out, and that way we can, again, it's learning from each other, so that we can solve some problems. That's really what it all comes down to, isn't it?
100%.
I mean, it's societally and from an execution and practical standpoint, that's exactly it. Trying to figure out how to do this right and solve problems and sustain what we're doing. I think that's the biggest thing for all of us.
I think in a lot of cases there's, that transfer of knowledge that you say is lacking, and that happens in so many different things in our world, that all of a sudden I realized when I was, I don't know, in my 30s or something, oh my God, this could be done better, and this could be done better, this could be done better, and why isn't it being done? So then you jump out there and you try to be part of it, and then let me back up a second. There's a whole lot of reinventing the wheel that ends up happening, and that same transfer of knowledge that you don't see that's happening from an older carpenter generation, older contractor generation down, has happened in all sorts of things. And whether it's a company like Huber marketing stuff, and some old school methods really work, but then it didn't get taught in school and it doesn't get carried on. We kind of missed that in a lot of places, and the continuity of just being able to reach out to younger people and bring them in was probably solved 50 years ago or 100 years ago, because they probably had the same problem. They probably had an economic downturn, and it wiped out that interest in going into our industry, which is, I think, what really happened and why we have such a deficit right now, because our economic downturn was so bad that there were no opportunities in construction for about 8 years. And now that there are, parents forgot about it, and a lot of people that didn't enter that are probably in your age group that just didn't get in because there was nothing there. So it's like, I don't know. I'm just rattling.
No, I guess it's also you're seeing this from a different perspective than we are, because nothing's unique to us and everything is very much cyclical. But this is all, John's way older than us, but for Nick and myself, this is all we know. All we know from getting into this industry has been like an uphill battle as to getting work, creating jobs, and it started with those recession years, like trying to get our foot in the door. So I think it's very difficult for us because we don't necessarily see the cyclical aspect of it, and it seems like we're just digging ourselves out of a hole. We don't see the, hey, this happened once before. We're just in it.
Let's put some positive on this. So I've been up and down through at least 4 recessions. This one was like the worst. We're on a climb. We're through with the worst, I think, on a lot of things that might be of concern to you.
Yeah.
Both on the recruitment side, I think we're on the upside. We're going up. I think on the skill side and transfer of skills and knowledge, I think there's a lot more people willing to do that. So let's keep that going, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I saw the bottom come within the last 5-8 years. I think we're really coming back, and I think it's going to be just a nice climb coming up. But we can accelerate that, and that's what you guys are getting to do.
I got a question for you, and you've seen decades before what we have. I just feel like I'm seeing a huge flip market where obviously there's I wouldn't shrug my shoulders because I really think it's massive. I think everyone's doing it on the side, and it's giving a lot of people at that like carpentry painting level a lot of jobs, and it's getting people into this industry. And I think that I'm worried that if the economy corrects itself and the market does correct itself, that it's going to wipe out half of what the industry actually is doing right now, because it's all flips, it's all putty and paint, it's all Home Depot cabinets, a lot of that stuff that it's not to say we're elevating ourselves above that, but the high-end market's always going to be high-end. Like the Ken Vaughn's and all those guys don't get touched by any of this stuff, and the quality's always been there, and it trickles down. But I feel like there's going to be a correction the next year, 2 years on the housing market, and that's going to affect a lot of people on what they're doing and how they flip, and the expansion of painters, carpentry companies, a lot of small higher-end stuff, siding companies where they're just flipping houses at a small amount, and even knocking down houses. The market's huge in the Boston area where they're doing knockdowns at a crazy rate, and I'm just worried that what happens when that correction happens. Like, I think what happens to our industry and where do those people go? Because that's what happened originally, is that everyone got out of carpentry and everyone was told to go to school because that's where the jobs were at. And then we all went to school and there were no jobs.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, you've seen the flip market. Maybe it was there 20 years ago.
When I shrug my shoulders, not because I disagree with you, it's like, yep, that happens all the time. You see that whenever the prices in housing start going up, all of a sudden, when an older house comes on the market, and it's all the timing thing in that regard, then somebody sees an opportunity to make a quick buck. I don't think we're ever going to have an impact on that.
Yeah.
That's the sad truth of it. Maybe again, I bump my head against the ceiling too much, but unless you get government involved and you work at a grassroots level with the entire community, not just the building community, but the entire community.
Right.
Now, John, you were talking about, what happens to those people who are doing that work? Did you say?
Yeah,
I was just wondering, take that a little bit further. The people who are working on those flip houses doing that work.
That's basically your entry level now.
Okay.
That's what people are getting into, and then if the economy corrects itself, that entry level's gone. So that's why, in my head, I'm thinking if more of these guys do internship programs, it's giving you multiple options on how you get into this.
Okay.
Where, college painting company, that's where I used to start. You used to paint on the weekends, and you'd paint houses, and it was that stuff. I don't know. Kind of like you, I'm rambling a little bit, but that's what I see happening, is that what happens to all those entry-level options if that market changes and it's not there anymore. And if no one's doing internships and stuff like that, then there's no way for kids to get into that early.
So we're talking a fundamental problem here, and that's housing in North America. That's a big problem.
That wasn't actually. It was more, how do you get this level of people to get younger kids into it if that market's not there anymore?
Right. And what I mean is, when I'm bringing it in that regard, that right now there's such a deficit in housing, and that's what drives flip markets, is a deficit in housing. So what we really need to do is be able to have more, where I see building happening is at a higher end in the new construction. We're not getting enough affordable new housing built, particularly in the Northeast and in other parts of the country, and it's really a housing shortage. It's because of pent-up demand. And so I think if there were ways of making houses. It's hard to build an affordable house today because of the cost of land. And if there was like the old Levittown kind of a thing where that would be the entry level in the where new houses are getting built, and then you go and you work as a framer for a while, and then you cut your teeth there, or you become a painter and you paint there, and then you work your way up to a higher level of skill and a higher level of interest and so on, and then it rises up. But
well, I think to what Johnny said, that I mean, I know in Boston everything's luxury, everything's high end. It's there to your point. The affordable housing market it's dictated by there's programs in place, but they have to meet a minimum, so they hit their minimum, and then everything else is luxury and high end and super high rate. So,
but on the flip side of that is there's no like entry level house.
That's what I'm getting.
It's all Avalons.
Right.
Everyone's going to condos and that stuff. That's why they're on the side of every highway.
So your entry level carpenter painter is coming in and doing luxury, and then that luxury market, I mean, suffers on the quality. But how do there's no stepping stone. You eliminate that entry level job, entry level house, and you're going right into high end, and so the quality suffers on the high end.
Yeah.
But it just you're missing a step there.
Yeah.
And how, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's your point, is how do we correct that? How do we put that step back so it's like before you become high end, start here.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say, what do we do before that market drops out?
Right.
And have a plan. We've all reacted to it.
I mean, I know. What time do you have something soon? I don't want to hang you up too much. But I think to wrap this, I think that the biggest takeaway from this is that Mike has seen a lot of trends within the industry, and if we take it to a bigger level than just like carpentry itself, I think that his biggest thing is that we should be focusing on controlling what we can control. There's a lot of crap right now that's out of our control. We're not going to control the housing market. We're not going to control the industry entirely. But if right now we do have a voice, that we should be using that to control our little microcosm of society and control what we can, like get into our towns, get into the Voc schools, get in something in New Jersey or Massachusetts like he has with Rhode Island, where start small and see where it goes. And then we have to take a grassroots approach. We're not going to change the entire industry. We'd have to be high to think so. It seems nice and everyone's super pumped on this, but it's going to go back downhill again sometime. And I think that if we take a grassroots approach to it, that we actually can make a difference, because that'll be sustainable.
Celebrate your successes, guys. I mean, because looking at the big picture, it can be pretty scary. But those little successes in your communities, and I'm talking to your audience too, those little successes in local are big. And it's going to take a lot of all of us to do a little part or a big part and have a hand in it.
And you said it earlier, how do we, we keep talking about how we do this, how we do that, but you mentioned the momentum, and we as a group here collectively, the momentum's going, and we're moving, and we're getting in front of everything. So it's not how we, what's the next big thing, but it's just maintaining what we're doing and just bringing more and more people involved.
You guys have got a lot of energy to be able to run your own businesses. That's what
this guy's out of his mind.
To put the amount of time you do into the podcast and all of your Instagram stuff, and then just meeting people and talking to people one-on-one and in small groups. I mean, that is just, I've done it. It's a lot of energy. Don't burn out on it, guys. I'm serious. I burned out on it a few years ago, and then I'm just coming back now, so be careful.
Well, just like you said, when someone reaches out and says they read your article, and that's where it's like that.
Isn't that a lot of energy?
That's what boosts it back up, because we
fills the tank.
We all hit it. We all hit our we run on empty. We're tired. It's like, what are we doing this for? And then it's like you get that message, and you're like, that's exactly why I do this.
Keep this all positive.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to keep positive, because if we started talking about all the problems there are out there, in the industry, whether it's manufacturers or skill loss and things like that, then it's a downer for listeners.
You're
I mean, we got to really push this to here's what we can do, and let's keep going, and cheerleaders.
All right, so where can we find you? Instagram, JLC, Fine Home Building. Here's your shameless plug.
Don't let, what? I whatever.
No, more people need to be able to connect with you. I mean, that's,
so it's
they can DM you. They can.
And then you can get out of here. Go put your tool
Yeah, you
belt
can do it
on.
on your couch now. You can sit on your couch and just answer questions and give people ideas.
I touch everybody who reaches out to me. I shouldn't say this to your audience, but everybody who reaches out to me gets a personal response.
That's awesome.
And I've done that.
DM him.
I have done that for my whole career, and I had to have Fine Home Building stop putting my website on my bio because I was getting so much. I was spending all my time.
So you guys
that, which
can
was
all
great.
reach out to Mike Guertin on Instagram.
It's,
Mike underscore
Mike underscore Guertin on Instagram, and then my website's MikeGuertin.com. And then you can also reach me through Fine Home Building, the Journal of Light Construction, all these other platforms.
Basically everywhere.
And they contact you, and you can circle them back to me or whatever.
We're just going to start passing through to Mike. So
all
yeah, right.
all the DMs,
No,
don't forward all the emails.
all the
I can
DMs
only
we get.
imagine.
he's our landing page now.
I'm proud of you guys.
Thank you.
If I
likewise.
talk too much, I'm going to cry here, and I'm
No one
serious.
will see you cry.
I'm serious.
Oh, they might.
Oh yeah.
We are doing video.
I'm serious. I mean, I'm not passing the torch because I don't want to be put in the barn, but I want to work with you guys.
Hell yeah.
Personally, or in fact, I want to go to New Jersey. And I want you to. I love the work you do, and I want to work on a job with you someday.
sure.
I missed an opportunity years ago to go work with Larry Hahn. I don't know if your listeners know who he is, but
If they don't, they
I
should.
I should have taken the time. I mean, we talked on the phone all the time, and it's just that's what I love to do. And I think that if other contractors, spread the word, and I don't, rising tide will rise all boats. So
Yeah.
you better
thanks,
do your
Mike.
outro.
Right.
Yeah. Before we keep gabbing on forever.
Now, Mike, this is
awesome. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you.
Anytime you guys have the time to have me on, let me know.
You're the one with
sure.
a tight schedule.
Yeah.
No,
You-
I'm only 45 minutes from you guys, so I'll meet you anywhere, anytime.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank
We'll make
you.
it happen. For sure.
So we're hanging out at the Huber booth.
Where
at
are we?
Huber.
JLC.
JLC. 2018. The Modern Craftsman.
You can get out of here. We'll close out. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You're great.
So big thanks to Huber for setting us up over here. Got us a nice table this time.
Yeah.
Mike,
Every time's great, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
This is a little bit easier.
It is. They brought donuts.
Yeah.
But Mike, I'm looking at all the paperwork he had in that manila folder, and I was like, I want to dig into all of that, but he's got such a grasp on.
He's seen so much.
Yeah.
So much.
And the fact that he's been up and down, but he's never, especially like he talked right away about how right in the beginning people were calling him out for all the stuff he was doing wrong, and how he reciprocated, because everyone asks us that. It's like, how do I handle that? And he had the perfect response. It's like, bring him up, talk about it. Do you have let's figure out, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, maybe let's converse.
No, I think it's good to kind of surround ourselves with people like that, an older generation of people who have the same mindset as ourselves. And I think that, like he said, he's just tired of bumping it. He was tired of bumping his head so many times that he's just focusing on what he can control. And I think that he sees the industry from what he's surrounding himself with, and he's always surrounded himself with a very high level of professionalism. And I think that it's been so long from him coming up through the ranks that he does have somewhat. I think that he's surrounding himself with people who have been on such a higher level for so long that he's not seeing what we saw coming up through the industry, like it's been so long since the roadblocks and the speed bumps and everything else, and he's been so far from competing with that lower level of builder and everything else that he probably did the same thing as us. He probably focused on that for so long that he's like battling this and battling that, and there's builders who are coming in and not charging enough and taking shortcuts, and it just probably was fighting a losing battle where he's like, all right, I'm going to forget about that, and I'm going to focus on my job and doing the best that I can. And I think that that's a good takeaway from this, because there's only so much we're going to be able to control, and we're not going
He's
to be able
made a
to
huge
shift
impact
everything.
with what he's controlled.
Yeah.
Instead of spreading out and diluting it.
Yeah, but I think that that's huge for us, that like there's that entire market that we're never going to control, and we just need to lead by example and keep doing what we're doing and surrounding ourselves with the people that we are, and good things will come. And to take it steady, not to bite off more than we can chew, and not to have John's level of intensity all the time. Take it slow, and we're fairly new at all of this. We have a few years ahead of us, and I think that we can make great strides and changes, but we just got to keep small and keep plugging away.
I think another thing people need to understand, and you brought it up in the beginning, is people reach out and say, why do you share everything? And you should hold that, hold the secrets back, but to look at that. I mean, everyone's always shared. To Mike's point, is that he's doing it in a magazine fashion, and I mentioned it earlier, is we just have a different avenue of sharing, and it's so direct and so fast that we're not doing anything different than Mike was doing. We just have a faster approach to it.
We also get responses a lot faster. So Mike's writing in a magazine. How many people are writing in to take the time?
Issue.
Yeah, and to take the time and be like, hey, why are you giving it? We post something and somebody's just bashing us or questioning what we're doing immediately. Literally within, like, you hit
seconds.
Post, and within seconds, people are questioning everything that you're doing, which is a good and bad thing. But, I mean, I think it's good and it's refreshing to get somebody else's perspective who's essentially doing what we're doing, just on a different platform.
Yep.
And to know that we're not crazy, and to know that, like, we definitely have our work cut out for us, and that, I mean, he's made a direct impact on what I've done, because he's very much still hands-on and everything else. And, like, I mean, I had the same tool belt as him for a long time, because I was like, that's a sick green Occidental bag. But, like, I think it's really important for people, even the guys who follow us on Instagram, to follow somebody like that and see what he's doing and what he did, and notice that, like,
We'll see the
he's what
from
sparked a lot of that
Right.
for us.
Agreed.
connecting, that generation to what we're doing.
Awesome, boys.
Let's go get some donuts.
Yeah, man. All right, you guys can find us at the.moderncraftsman on Instagram. DM us if you have any topics, ideas, guests that you'd like to see.
We're revamping our website, themoderncraftsman.org. You can email us at info@themoderncraftsman.org.
Then you can find us on every single platform that has a podcast.
Ever in the world.
Including
Ever.
Alexa.
Yeah, Alexa.
I haven't tried that yet. Have you?
No.
I'm
Who
going
is
to try
she?
that when I get home.
Who is she?
I don't know. I think she plays us in your kitchen Alexa setup.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, again, we were at Huber Booth 2018.
You didn't ask for reviews, man. We're at almost 300.
Guys,
Reviews.
yes. It means a lot to us. I mean, it keeps us
It
obviously
pushes us up.
in the rank and helps us, stay relevant with what we're promoting, and grow our audience and make this bigger and bigger and bring on cooler and cooler guests. And
I had a
dig
guy.
into
I had a
topics.
guy last night that said, "Hey, I didn't even know this IG community existed. I found you guys through the podcast."
Amazing.
So
Oh,
this
really?
kid found us the opposite way, and he was
That's
like,
crazy.
I'm a carpenter. I love this. I listen to podcasts, and I Googled it, found it, and then he's like, then I found you guys, and then he went to the meetup last night with his 50 people.
You got stopped the other day, right?
Yeah, I did. Got pulled over.
He's like,
He was
I
just-
love your
yeah.
I love your podcast.
I'm in my truck, and he pulls over. I open it up, and I'm like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Love the podcast." And he kept
That's
driving.
funny.
It's so cool. So, everyone that has written a review, thank you so much. Everyone
you,
that
yeah.
has not, shoot us an email and/or a review, please.
Could be as easy as 5 stars.
It's true.
Just saying.
Pretty easy.
Pretty easy. All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Later, guys.
See ya.